Hey, what's up everybody? Keith McGinnis here with KCDC Designs. Let's create some Labradorite. If you've ever seen this stone in person, it is absolutely amazing. The color shifting properties are crazy. As you turn it, you see different colors. And I wanted to be able to create that, and I wanted to be able to recreate it and make it easy enough where you could do it too. And it's all done in one pour. So let's see how it's done. So I tried something different on every sample board that I did to try to create or recreate this. And not that I didn't like the ones that I did, but there was just different techniques with each one that I did. Some I didn't care for too much, but what it did was it kind of gave me an idea of what I need to do to really get this to pop and kind of match that image I had in my mind. And what I came up with was having a grease coat down on the surface first. And it's not a real tight grease coat. That's probably 2 ounces per square foot. But I did that because I wanted to have a layer of epoxy underneath when I start adding the colors and start adding some effects. And although the color shift mica powders work best, I guess you can see the most effect when you're going over a black surface. I also determined when I was doing the sample boards that I wanted to have some brightness underneath. I wanted to get some yellow and some gold, and that's what I fogged the surface with, and that's where you kind of see those splotches. But in the end, all it does is add a little bit of brightness. It's cool how it transforms. Just watch.
So I'm just getting some air bubbles out. And let's talk about torching real quick. I see a lot of people that were torched like this, and understand what you're doing is you're only hitting the bubbles where that flame is concentrated. I also see people that are torching way up here, kind of going over it like that. You're not getting the bubbles popped, and then you're wondering why you have dimples in there the next day. And it's because you didn't get those bubbles popped. When the bubbles did pop, the epoxy was not fluid enough to self-level and close back up, and that leaves you with those little dimples. What I like to do is I get my torch at about a 45-degree angle because I'm going to cover an area of about that far, and then I'm just going to go with the constant sweeping motion all the way across. That way I know I caught the full area. The next time I'll go across this way, then I know I haven't missed anything. Search for the bare necessities. The simple bare necessities.
Now, as far as the color shift mica powders, or they're called chameleon, that's how you get that color shift. I'm working on 3 different brands, so I'll put in the description which brand so far that I have found to be the best, for me anyway.
With these color shift colors, the powder that you see, the color of the powder inside the jar, is not always what you're going to get on the surface. So I made a color chart with all of my color shift colors so I can tilt it and know how those colors shift and what they're going to look like. So I have one that is a purple that shifts to a blue, and I have another blue that kind of shifts to a purple. And I like them both, and what I decided to do was mix them together. So that's a new experiment for this one, is mixing 2 different color shift colors. Do I know how that's going to look on the surface? Not a clue. But I can tell you it looks really cool in a cup.
And the reason I mixed them is because I wanted one that had a little bit more blue in it. The other one had more of a purple when it color shifted. So that's why I mixed the 2 together.
When I look at Labradorite, hey, you want a fun fact? Labradorite. Labrador-ite. Labrador, the dog. Labrador came from Labrador, Canada. Labradorite was first discovered in Labrador, Canada. That's why it's called Labradorite. The Labrador retriever, the dog. Labrador got its name from Labrador, Canada. How's that for a fun fact? Y'all gonna sleep better knowing that? What if a Labrador had a color shift coat of fur? Wouldn't that be cool? All right, back to the project. Stop yakking. Now again, if I spread this out too thin, I'm not going to get a lot of that color shift reaction. And I don't want to put this out in thin ribbons, because when I look at Labradorite, when I see the color shift, it typically occurs, it usually has, I don't want to say splotches, but bigger areas. Gonna get a big splotch in there. I'm gonna save a little bit of this back. Excuse me. Yeah, that is massively color shifting.
So I don't want to leave those blobs in there, so I'm going to meld those out with my hand, but I don't want to thin out too much of that color shift color, otherwise it's not going to color shift. You're not going to see that iridescence. And this is another reason also why I put the clear kind of wash coat, a little bit heavier than just a thin wash coat, but that's another reason why I put that wash coat down there is as I meld these colors, as you're seeing what I'm doing now with my hand, because there's a wash coat down there, it's going to help all of that soften, and it's going to take those finger marks out of there. And you'll see how this is going to develop over time. If I would have gone over a dry surface, then you would see more of how I melded that out. Now, with this one, to do something a little bit different, because Labradorite, not the whole entire stone itself is iridescent, I'm going to add some blue earth, some gold, and some black to add some contrast, and we'll see what happens. So here's where I'm going to add in some fill-in color, and this is a blue earth, and I know, well, actually the blue earth does kind of go with purple, but I'm just kind of filling in some of the areas. Now I'm going to add some black in there, and this one I'm just going to kind of swirl in with my stick, because I want to meld that in with my hand, and that's not necessarily as much fill-in as it is trying to get a little bit of contrast in there, but it's breaking it up just a little bit, but you're going to see how it all pulls together towards the end. Even when I'm creating this, I'm thinking, okay, well, that doesn't look like much. But just from experience of doing this for so long, you know it's going to continue to develop basically until you get to the end. So far I've added in the blue earth, adding in some black swirls, and then later on I'm going to add a little bit of gold in there as well. Again, just as kind of a filler, but it does end up making a big difference.
See how waking up those micas? Wow. Those are really kind of settling, which is expected. I think I might like that black in there like that. And because it's so striated, I don't know if I want to do this quite yet, but what if I took my notched Bondo spreader?
Remember all those fracture lines that we saw in that Labradorite? That was kind of my thought of using that notched Bondo spreader to kind of make it appear like layers. Now keep in mind I'm still experimenting as I'm creating this one, and that's a notched Bondo spreader, just taking a pair of scissors and making V notches in it. But then going across that, especially early when the epoxy is really fluid, but going across that creates those lateral lines, and then those will continue to soften. And then of course, when you torch it, you're making the epoxy more fluid, and that helps those lines soften also. But again, in the end, very, very lightly, you'll be able to see where it almost looks like layers in there. So don't be afraid to experiment and have fun with it. We'll speed this part up right here, but once again, just kind of adding in some accents and give it a little bit of contrast as well. And although it looks like a lot of black, here's what it looks like when it's completely done.
There's something about this over here, but I'm going to go in here and we're just going to do this is what you see a lot in Labradorite, is veins going a lot of different directions. Now these are going to soften up so much that you won't see them very easily. But what it also does is kind of helps with those color shifts. Now those little fractures that I just put in there, those are really starting to soften quite a bit. But I'm going to be adding quite a few more using some black spray paint. But we got to let that set up quite a bit. Otherwise, as soon as the spray paint hits that fluid epoxy, the spray paint's going to bleed And I really want the fractures to more stay in place. All right, we're 30 minutes in, and I'll be back in 30 minutes. Now, when it comes to fractures, you can use a Bondo spreader, or you can use tongue depressor, and you can do the, large, medium, small, which, oh, wow, I love it. That is just right. So I'm going to use this so I don't take a chance of dropping it.
What I got so excited about there was, see how I'm chopping it, how those chops looks like they're staying a little bit more? That's because I'm an hour into the pour and the epoxy is starting to set up and it's not near as fluid.
But now I'm going to get some black spray paint, and I'm just going to spray some black spray paint on my table here. And we'll see how this works. Okay, that's not bleeding too much.
Now is when you can add those accent fractures. Here's where you can get creative, and this is where studying the Labradorite, even though almost every one of them is different, but they go off in all different directions, and some of them are very linear.
Now, if I flick it a little bit, it puts some little tails off of those fractures, which looks, oh, those are really cool.
So we're going to speed this up again right here, but here's the real Labradorite. And there's those fracture lines that I'm talking about. A lot of them are linear. Some of them go back and forth. Again, take a look at Labradorite because there's a lot of different variations. And that's what pretty much makes it foolproof of whatever you come up with.
I think I'm going to stop. I like that. I like that. Now I'm going to torch it pretty lightly just to get some of those air bubbles out. But I like what I've got there, and the color shift is really, really cool. It's color shifting a lot. All right, let's do a flyover. I'm excited. I like how that one turned out. We might have a winner here. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. All right. All right, so let's see what you're looking at, your view you've got right there. And then again, I'm going to come around the other side of the table here. Now, personally, I'm really glad that I fogged it with the gold and the yellow. It really brightened that up a lot. So that's kind of the angle that I've been looking at it. And then let's go down. Oh, let me get my tripod out of the way. Okay, there's your angle. And now, let's watch those colors shift. Very cool. All right, let's get some close-ups.
So we do a flyover. What I really want you to take note of is how much that has developed over time. Remember each step I did, it really wasn't showing what it was truly going to look like because the epoxy was still moving. Everything was still softening. And that's one of the things that we teach in our 3-day classes is you've got to be patient and you have to understand that things are going to change as time goes on. So be patient and just step back and look at it occasionally and figure out your next step. So remember, the only tools I used to create this were my hands and a Bondo spreader. And you don't have to take that step of the notched Bondo spreader. To me, it just added another element, and it was an experiment, and I wanted to see how it was going to turn out. So it's not a complicated process. It was a single pour. This was using Stone Coat Countertop Epoxy, where I've got basically an hour and a half to 2 hours of working time. So thanks everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe. And once again, this is Keith McGinnis with KCDC Designs. If you've made it this far, don't forget you can always save 10% on your stonecoatcountertops.com order. Anything on their website using promo code KCDC. Also, check us out on the web at kcdcdesigns.com. You can see our work. And then also get registered for our 3-day hands-on epoxy classes. We go through everything beginning to end, learning best practices to achieve the best results. Thanks again, everybody. Once again, Keith McGinnis here with KCDC Designs, and we'll see you on the next video.